Cool. So welcome, everybody. Excited for everybody to join us and learn more about Destination Imagination. So we'll do a quick round of intros. We'll talk a bit about our respective organizations, and then we'll spend most of the time talking about Destination Imagination, what it is, what are the different programs. We're so lucky to have Beth and Alan join us, who run the Best of the Bay region for Destination Imagination. So why don't I let you guys introduce yourselves? You're on mute, Alan.
Wait, well.
You're still on mute, Alan.
Uh-oh.
Why don't you go back?
I'll go, Beth. I'll go first. My name is Beth McCarthy. Destination Imagination, the Best of the Bay region, covers all the way from the Oregon border down to about Watsonville. And we go inland, not quite as far into Davis. So if you just imagine a nice big rectangle, we're called Best of the Bay because the majority of our teams are coming from the Bay. And traditionally, we have been very heavy on the East Bay, and we're excited to East Bay meaning Tri-Valley. We're excited to maybe get a few more teams from the other side of the hills. We do have teams all the way in Sunnyvale. This year we've had some teams in San Francisco and out in Mountain House. So I've been with Destination Imagination about 20 years and newly regional co-director with Alan. So I'll let him introduce himself.
All right, I am off mute now, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So I am Alan Lamb. Like Beth said, I am the co-director of the Best of the Bay region for Destination Imagination. We just started this season or this upcoming season. I also joined the board of California Creativity, which is the entity that administers the Destination Imagination program in California. I was introduced to Destination Imagination about 15 years ago. Our neighbor told us about it, and we formed a team. And we had a team for about 5 years. It was a great experience. I've been volunteering in some capacity at the regional level since. And like I said, I joined started getting involved at the state level about 3 years ago. Again, and that's probably fairly typical of all of our volunteers, where they just got introduced to the program, they participated, and they found it such a rewarding experience that they've been volunteering for for decades, right?
And we'll get into Piedmont Makers. I think most of people know Piedmont Makers. We have a slide coming up about that. But Dave Raganey is co-founder of Piedmont Makers. We have grown over the last decade plus the largest youth robotics league in the US. This year, we'll have, I think, over 1,000 kids that are in our robotics programs, which we're really excited about. But we also have always wanted to diversify a bit around and introduce other super interesting programs. So we got connected to Destination Imagination, and we're really excited to offer this program as a pilot this coming fall. So we think there's a lot of connectivity in terms of who we are and what we do, and we think there's an opportunity to grow, this program within our community as well. So we're excited about it. And for folks that are new to Destination Imagination, we have a brief video. It's about a minute long. I think the audio is going to work. If you can give me a thumbs up when I start playing.
65% of today's students will be employed in jobs that don't exist yet. We may not know what these jobs look like, but we do know the skills these future leaders and innovators will need to embody. That's where we come in. We are Destination Imagination, an educational nonprofit dedicated to inspiring the next generation of creative problem solvers. Our project-based challenges help students around the world gain the skills they need for lifelong success. So, Where will your child's imagination take them? The creative journey starts here. Learn more at destinationimagination.org.
And a lot of that video is actually, I think, at the World Championship. So you can see how big, these competitions can become. Beth or Alan, do one of you want to talk a little bit about the global organization?
Go ahead, Beth.
All right. So Destination Imagination is global. There are over 30 countries typically participate at our tournament at the end of the season, which is always at the end of May. You can get anywhere from a dozen to, again, up to about 30 international countries participating. This year, even China invited some of our teams to their tournament, which was in December, and that was just their country tournament. They then were also able to come to Globals. Destination Imagination started as an offshoot of Odyssey of the Mind. Many of you may have heard of that. And probably 25 years ago, I think it was in 88, a group separated out from Odyssey of the Mind because they wanted to do things that were a little different, that really put the child, the student, centered in the program and make the program be all student learning and have no adult interference, which is a word that you'll hear us use a few times. I will just, as an anecdote to all of what you see here, the mission, the vision, and history, the first time I went to Global Finals, someone from NASA was the keynote speaker at one of the big events. And he looked out at an audience of thousands, tens of thousands, and just said, "You guys are our future leaders. We are here as a sponsor because we know that you will be the kids that are able to transition to the workforce of the future." And the energy is absolutely palpable when you go to one of those events. So this is a nonprofit. It's all volunteer. Once you get involved in Destination Imagination, most people stick around. My kids are grown. My youngest just graduated from college, and I have been a part of Destination since my oldest was in 5th grade. So.
Great. And a little bit more about who we are as Piedmont Makers. So we're a community-based nonprofit. We've been around for about 10 years. Our mission seems like it's very much aligned to Destination Imagination as well. We endeavor to inspire kids to be innovators and creative problem solvers in STEAM. Our focus more recently has been on robotics. So like I was saying, this coming season, we probably will have more than 1,000 students in our program. So it's getting bigger and bigger every year. Beyond robotics, we do things like the Maker Fair. We give grants to schools and to teachers every year. We've fundraised to build infrastructure like the engineering lab at the high school at Piedmont. And then also this most recent season, we opened a 7,000 square foot youth robotics facility in Oakland. That serves the greater Bay Area. We had, I think, on the order of 25 or 50 teams in that, in the most recent FRC season. And just given all this infrastructure that we've created, we think, a tremendous platform to expand and start to offer other programs that are connected to STEAM. So that's what really is prompting this pilot this season and why we're so excited about Destination Imagination. So I'll turn over to Beth and Alan to walk through what it is.
I'm just going to keep going here, and Alan can add if I leave anything out. So as you saw in the video, which I think kind of said it all, we're an educational nonprofit, very much aligned with what you're doing in Piedmont Makers, project-based learning, hands-on experience. Something that makes our program different from Piedmont Makers is we are focused on challenges and instant challenges. So every season, 7 brand new challenges are released, one of which is geared towards our youngest learners, K through 2. 6 are available for any team then to select to work on as part of their season. And then we also have instant challenges which are really that hands-on quick thinking. They're usually done in under 8 minutes. Teams are working together and they're scored not only by what they produce, but how well they work together. So just like what you're doing with all of your projects, the creative thinking, the problem solving, the team building, everything that I think if you're a parent coming to this, you already believe these are the skills we want our kids to have. And I know, again, I have 3 older kids and I can say these are the skills that got them through college, and for 2 that are already off to jobs that made them interesting to not only the colleges being accepted, but for the employers that have been employed them. I think we have one more slide on what is, so I mentioned challenges and instant challenges. So the challenge experience is how we refer to that. When you're part of a Destination Imagination season, teams will form and they will select one of the either 6 or 7 challenges, depending on their age. And this is happening across the world. So everyone that's competing in Destination Imagination around the world is working off these same challenges. And they will then compete at a regional tournament, which we are the best of the Bay region, 1 section out of 4 in California. Texas has many regions within Texas. As you can imagine, it goes around the country, around the world. So we compete at a regional tournament, and then those that move on from there get to go up and compete at a state tournament. In every one of those competitions, they are working on their producing and presenting their challenge and working on an instant challenge. So in all of those, it's all about the skills that they've done, all of the work that they've done without interference, and their ability to then present that at a tournament and get scored. So I think I've mentioned much of this. We are kindergarten through university. Within our region, we typically only do kindergarten through high school. And our regional tournament has teams in all of those ages. A team is from 2 to 7 students paired together, and that's often by school or neighborhood or community group. The season opens officially in August, and if your team is registered and you have background checks for your parents, then, or for your team manager, then the solutions are released and kids can actually start working together. Prior to when challenges are released, teams often will work together and practice instant challenges. Again, those are quick challenges. If you go online and type in instant challenge, you'll see some samples, and I have one coming up in a slide ahead. But every team needs a team manager, 1 or 2. If you're a new team, it's often good to have 2. And then your teams typically will practice once or twice a week, depending on the team and the team manager's time. So we can go on to interference. This is a slide unto itself because interference is a key component to our program. And this may be an area where we differ. I don't know what your robotics and makers do. Interference means, as you can see in the illustration, these students are the only ones that work towards their solution. So once a team has selected a challenge, let's say they want to do fine arts this year, they will read through the metrics, and their team manager, if they're kindergartners, can help them read that. That's fine. But then when the teams start to go, oh, I want to create a character that does this, and then I want to build this, and I want to make this costume, and the story's going to go like this, the team manager gets to sit back and listen and encourage without offering up ideas. It is critical that everything a team brings to the tournament is all their own work. Now, that means when a child's sitting around the dinner table and the parent says, what'd you do at DI today? The kid can say, oh, we made this cool thing and we did this and it was so much fun. Or, oh, boy, I tried this and it didn't work and we're having such a hard time. If the parent were to say, you know what, you should use screws instead of nails for that. Guess what? Student can no longer do that. They are not allowed to use that idea. So we teach the kids early on to say, stop, that's interference, when parents or siblings or friends give them ideas, because we want this all to be from the kids. And I will say that because of that, the kids do amazing things that parents, adults would never think of. So that means even when they're sewing their costumes, the kids are sewing them. Now, what leads up to that is you're allowed to teach skills. So when a team is not working on their challenge, if you decide, and you guys have an amazing, the huge makerspace that you have opportunities to teach sewing, to teach working with skill saws, to teach working with power drills, hammers and nails. There are many kids that have never used any tools, hot glue gun, staple gun. Depending on the age, you're allowed to teach all of those skills. There are no rules about that. My daughter in 5th grade was using power saws because she had been taught the proper safety gear. Now, a parent or an adult has to sit there next to the power cord in case something goes awry and they need to pull the plug. But the kid actually does the work themselves. You can teach the skills. For instant challenge, those are opportunities for teaching. If you think that your team maybe needs a little bit of help learning how to project when they're speaking, you can give them instant challenges that have performance in them. And then in those are opportunities for teaching. You can actually turn to the kids and say, what do you think? How did you do? And then give suggestions for how to turn their shoulders or make sure to look forward. In an instant challenge, you can teach. But in a challenge, once they've selected their challenge, once they are writing their story, creating their backdrop, making their costumes, working on their technical piece, you get to sit back and watch them and encourage them. And when they fail, which that's, a key component to this is having things fall apart, having things not work, really encouraging them to say, okay, what do you think went wrong? Team, take a look. What do you think will help this person do what they're doing? And they get to solve the problem. So interference is absolutely critical. Then you might say, well, how do you know? At our tournament, the teams will present. Most challenges are only 8 minutes long, their presentations. And afterwards, the appraisers will come up and ask them. So appraisers are watching and scoring certain elements. And then they will come up to the kids and say, wow, that was really cool. Can you tell me how you did that? And we know kids are super honest. So we've heard stories all along, and teams will get deductions where they say, oh, well, my dad, he got the saw out and he made that. And you're like, okay. So points will come off. So parents, if you interfere or if you let the siblings interfere or the neighbors down the street, the kids are going to let us know and their scores will be impacted for it. So our goals are not to win. Our goals are to teach all of these skills and have kids be excited to work together. But it is a competition, and kids do want to move on and they want to be rewarded and feel proud of themselves for the work that they do. So this is an opportunity for the adults in the room to sit back and watch and be amazed at what will happen. So that's our interference. What does robotics do, or what do Piedmont Makers do for parent work with the kids, especially when you're working on things towards competitions?
I would say it's definitely not as strict. So there's, I would say, a variation of how far the coaches lean in versus lean out. But I think this is really interesting in terms of progressing kind of where we draw the line between parent involvement and kid involvement. So I like the direction.
Yeah. All right.
I don't know, Shelley, if you want to add anything from a FLL perspective.
Yeah, I think it's slightly a little different. I think for Innovation Project, we really want the hands off from the parents and we really want the kids to do a lot of it. On the robotics side, there is a lot of teaching because a lot of them don't know how to do spike that are younger kids. If they're going to go in, very few teams will do Python, but they don't know. So it's a teaching opportunity. So there is more teaching of how do I make a mechanism or how do I write this code? So I think more on the robotics side, there can be more coach involvement in the kind of the teaching aspects of it. But I think with the Innovation Project, you can tell the posters, right? Where the kids really lean in versus parent produced posters. And of course it varies with age.
Yeah. Well, that's what's remarkable about this. So we can teach, right? So all those skills can get taught, but then once they're working on what we call the challenge, what they're going to be presenting, everything that comes on stage, including the ideas, the story, all of that has to be kid work. So I will tell you, I taught my daughter's team how to sew sewing machine, the whole 9 yards. And when it came to doing their costumes, they didn't do anything I taught them. And you know what? Their costumes held together. And I sat there and you're just like, oh, you're watching and it's hard. There are so many times like that as a team manager, when you're just like, oh my gosh, I wish I could tell them it would be somebody, but you can't. You've taught them the skills and now they apply them. And teams that have been together, like you can have a third grade team astonish you if they've done it first grade, second grade, and third, versus even a middle school team who maybe is brand new because they've not only done some of it, but they've also been to tournament where they learn and see from other people what is possible. So we do allow the teaching. It's just when they're actually working on what they're going to present, that's when it's hands off. All right, so our categories, every year our challenges change. So we always have technical, engineering, scientific, fine arts, improv, service learning, and then early learning. And that's we call them our rising stars. So those are our kinder through second grade. They have that one challenge that is dedicated to them. This year within that, so technical is get sorted, engineering is under investigation. You can see that those change every year. And what the challenges are asking the kids to do will be different. So I had kids choose everything from technical to engineering to fine arts. What that means is in a technical challenge, you're not just doing a technical piece. You are actually doing likely a full story. Many kids will make costumes. They will create backdrops. And the focus is on the technical challenge. So there will be something about doing technical elements within. Is that hydraulics? Is it some kind of an engineering feat? That's up to the kids, how they want to solve it. So the challenges are very open-ended and the kids choose how they want to go about solving. Same for scientific. It's often something to do with the scientific method. And then it will be open-ended enough that the kids can go in and interpret it their own way. We never, ever, ever see the same solution twice. Fine arts, I had one team that made a movie. Again, it was 6 minutes long, but it was a movie that was acted out on stage. And then improv is what you might imagine. That one rarely will have any set pieces or costumes. I say rarely because last year they actually included some of that in it, but this year I think that's back out. So they practice certain types of improv, and then when they come to their competition, they're given what they do on the spot, and they will have certain things they will have had to research. So that on the spot will be about that. One year it was about historical figures, and they had about 30 historical figures to learn. And then their improv was about 2 of those, which they drew out of a hat. Service learning is really interesting. And we have kids all the way down into the third grade level that do this. This is when we're actually doing a service project in your community. So they design, they plan, they implement the service project, and then they present about it at tournament. And so they are not only scored about what they do, but they're scored about that presentation. And in that too, they have an opportunity to do a backdrop or to do costumes. Early learning is just a simplified version of a challenge. It generally has fewer elements that are required. And we really encourage the K through 2s to work on that. They do not have to. And our teams are grouped together. Whoever is the oldest on a team sets your level. So if you have a kinder, a first, and a fourth grader, they are not eligible for that because they are in the elementary level. But if you have kinders and firsts on a team, they can do early learning. And often our older kids look at the early learning challenge and go, why can't we do that one? Because they're often really fun and very sweet. And then instant challenge is a separate piece to our challenge itself. At tournament, kids will have a time slot for each. An instant challenge is something that teams generally practice all year. And there are many different types. There are building challenges. There are performance challenges. They are all generally 6 to 8 minutes. They will have a certain set of materials, and in Destination Imagination, very often you'll find recycled materials. So it's a lot of, in this case, mailing labels, maybe an envelope, maybe spaghetti, hard spaghetti, paper clips, toothpicks, pipe cleaners, and they'll be asked to, on the spot, solve a certain piece of challenge. And then they get scored on how well they work and how well the whole team interacts. And then also, did they make either the height requirement or the weight requirement, things like that. Often creativity. So I briefly mentioned all those. The key component to that is there is something for everyone in every challenge. So when I was a team manager, the kids varied. I had about 3 kids that stayed the same, and then some years there were different kids. And I always had one kid that really wanted to get into like the technical engineering. And I always had really one who wanted to just build. All they wanted to do was make stuff. And then I had the ones that wanted to write stories. There's a piece in every challenge for every kid. So if you look at it and you think, oh, my kids, they're only science, that's all they want to do. I will tell you that there is something in each challenge that all types of children really love. And there's a piece for everyone on the team to do. Any questions before I move on from that? There are previews of these online, and I can send you to that part on the website very easily. I didn't want to go into too much depth tonight. All right, so I jumped ahead on the instant challenges. This is, again, think on their feet. If you've been in a corporate setting where they've done any of this kind of game playing, it's very similar. They get materials, they get something to do. They're said time starts now. It's usually 2 minutes to plan, maybe 5 minutes to do, and then they get scored by appraisers. Any questions on instant challenge? Alan, am I missing anything that you think we ought to add to either of those two things?
No, I mean, no. I think you covered everything very well.
Okay. This is sample instant challenge in case anybody's wondering about that. So this is literally what one would look like. The kids would come into a room. This would be on the table. The challenge is to build the tallest possible structure, place a feather on the top, and then blow the feather off to land as far away as possible. You have 5 minutes to use your teamwork, creativity, and innovation skills to build the structure with the materials provided. You will then have one chance to blow the feather as far as you can. So then tends to be sort of like what's the story behind this? So you've been asked to build a new prop for the sequel of the Muppets. The structure must be freestanding on the tabletop and must be as tall as possible so the feather can fly at a long distance. So they get 5 minutes to plan and then some time to build. And you can imagine in here, so kindergartners are doing this, 3rd graders are doing this, 5th graders are doing this, and high schoolers are doing this. The challenge doesn't change. The younger kids are competing against others in their age group. The middle schoolers are competing in their age group, and the high schoolers are competing in their age group. At tournament, there are maybe 10 different instant challenges, and they don't know which one they're going to get. So if you can imagine, our younger kids are going to come up with very different solutions from our older kids, but every team, they're getting scored on innovation, creativity, how well they work together. And as you can imagine, when you have 6 kids around a table with these few materials, often as a team manager, you're teaching like, okay, stop, think. What are your scoring elements? What do the rules say? How many of you are going to participate? Sometimes there's a story that gets told alongside. So they have to figure all of that out in a very short period of time. So instant challenges, again, are something that we work on, that a team would work on all year long in preparation for tournament. All right. So our season, right now, you could purchase a team number starting now and all the way up until season starts August 1st. We actually allow people to continue to purchase team members all the way up till January 15th. But August is when the materials are released for the challenges. In order to get all of the materials, you need to be a registered team with a team manager that has passed a background check. Once those two things are done, and that can all be done, if your team manager's lived in California for over 5 years, that background check is pretty quick. It's through Sterling Volunteers. But once that's done, then starting August 1st, the materials are all digital. They come to the team manager. That will have a copy of every challenge. It will have what's called a roadmap. It will have a quick start guide, which gives you some ideas of how to go about your season. So that August is sort of the beginning. And then all the way in our region, all the way to the end of February, teams are meeting and practicing and working on their challenge. In December, often the first weekend in December, we host an instant challenge day where all the teams can come, and we work it in 3 or 4 sessions depending on the number of teams, and they can actually pretend like it's tournament, but they get lots of feedback, and the families are welcome to come, and the team managers are there, and everyone can get feedback on instant challenge. Our tournament has traditionally been the last week in February. It's always a bit up in the air because we have a hard time getting our venues. It's been at Foothill High School in Pleasanton the last few years. And then the state tournament is usually the end of March or early April. And then Globals is always the 3rd or 4th week in May. And that is it's global, so it sounds exciting, but it's in Kansas City, Missouri. So before that, it was in Tennessee.
In Beth, one thing that I know you and I were talking about is teams, even though the challenge drops in August, teams could potentially start later. They could start in September or October. I know the robotics, if you've done Piedmont Makers robotics before or first, it starts pretty early. It starts in August, but in FTC is September, etc. So because the actual competition is not until February in our region, the teams potentially could start later as well.
And often they do. So August 1st usually is returning teams because they know and they're ready and they're anxious. We do a lot of information sessions at schools, August, September, even October. So our team manager training, we generally will have 3 or 4 dates. One might be late September, and then one would be in October and one would be early November. So we're still training team managers that far out to catch everyone that's registering for a team. So it is not unusual for a team to get started in September or October. Yeah.
With that said, though, I would say that the earlier you start, the better, because it's a fairly long process, and you want, to give the kids enough time to build their story, build their props, come up with their stories, and then just enough time to practice.
Yeah. And just getting to know each other. Oftentimes our teams are coming together where maybe 3 of the kids know each other and the others don't. So we really encourage a lot of play. Instant challenge is great for this, getting to know them, getting to know their strengths and weaknesses and that types of things. So that can take some time when they're just getting started.
Do you want to talk a bit about the team manager role and what the ask is?
Yeah. So every team, Destination Imagination is all volunteer, which I think you are too. So you're familiar with this. In order to have a team, we have to have a team manager. A team manager must be 18 or over and completed out of high school. So no high school seniors can run a team. We've seen high school seniors mentor teams, but I recommend, if you're getting started brand new, it's great to have a co-team manager. The team manager then sets when and where the teams will meet and practice. So when I was a team manager, I knew that Friday afternoons was my time. And so I set the meeting time. We met every Friday from right after school for about an hour and a half when they were little. And then that was at my house. I'm lucky enough to have an outbuilding where we were able to keep things. Oftentimes, my son was on a team where they met in someone's living room. My oldest daughter was on a team where the family gave up their garage for months because that was Destination Imagination space, and they had so many power tools and everything. They just needed that space. So you decide. It is a good practice because kids will be building. Depending on their challenge, they are likely to be building things, to have a space where things can be safe from siblings or obviously the weather. So that's really, there are no requirements for where you meet. but having it be someplace that holds it, that is safe. As a team manager, again, I committed to basically 2 hours a week. I did a little bit of planning ahead of that, especially when I was a new team manager. It took me a little bit more time to get my materials together. But all I was doing was holding a space for the team and then helping them to read their challenge, to learn their challenge, setting up a schedule. So you can help some with time management. And then they're dreaming up ideas. We did a lot of whiteboards and things like that. As the season gets on, December, January, February, we often find that teams want to meet more. So just so you know, that tends to happen. Like we find every school holiday, the team wants to get together because they're painting something or they're sewing something or they want to tweak their whatever. So just know that ahead of time. Generally, though, we say one meeting a week for up to 2 hours, depending on their age. And you kind of know how long kids go. When I had then high schoolers doing this, every time they weren't at practice for something else, they were together doing something. And as they get more experience, you aren't required to have every team member together for everything. If your story writers want to get together and write a story and then bring it back to the team, they can do that. So we have team manager training. They're generally 3 or 4 during the early part of the season. We also have skills building sessions, and those are generally on a Saturday in Danville because we have someone that hosts it in their garage. You guys in your makerspace may be able to have all of that covered, but that's one where team managers can bring the team, and we will teach them hydraulics, or we will teach them about springs or magnetism, so they will be focused on some type of learning. We actually find a lot of our team managers don't know how to do most of this stuff, so they're learning alongside the kids.
One thing that we do, at least in our robotics programs, is we have typically when the season starts, we do our own training as well. So I think Alan, Beth, and I have been discussing like what that looks like for these teams, whether or not, our teams join the Best of the Bay training or we do our own. So I think to be continued. But one thing that we do above and beyond, what Beth has been describing is we do offer things like we have Slack channels for all our team managers. So if there are questions between teams, coaches can help each other as well. That's worked well, with our robotics program as well. So we'll probably create something similar here.
We have a WhatsApp group for all of our team managers. Once they've gone to training, they're invited into a WhatsApp group. And again, we because of interference, teams don't necessarily talk about their actual solution, but it may be questions about, I don't understand what this is saying in the challenge. Or boy, how do you get 3-year-olds to sit down for that long? I mean, the types of questions that people ask in the chat is very different, but they tend not to share solutions with each other. So it's a different dynamic, I think.
So from a registration perspective, we'll run registration through Piedmont Makers. So we'll do it as we do with our robotics programs. If you go to piedmontmakers.org/DI, there's a register link. We have a program manager on staff too that's going to help form the team. So she'll match based on age, school, gender, availability. When you register, you should say if you have friends that you want to be paired with, you should say that as part of the registration form. The one thing that is it is a requirement is we will not form these teams unless we have a parent team manager that's been identified. So we can help with this. We can help coordinate when you register, but we will not, go so far as register with DI and get the official, get the team number and all that, unless we have the team manager. And I think Beth, to your point, that team manager needs to go through a background check as well. So that'll be part of the process. The fee, it'll be an individual fee, and then as part of that, you get the DI registration, all the training, the supplies that we've been talking about. It'll also pay for the background check. So if you have multiple team managers, it'll pay for that background check. we, as Piedmont Makers, we also have a shirt that we give to all the kids, so they'll have a team shirt. And then I mentioned the program manager as well. So we have a program manager on staff that helps coordinate, and she also helps with a lot of the communication as well. There's a question in the chat from Christine. Can we use Shelley asked, can we use our first background check for this? I actually don't know. I think First is also using Sterling, maybe, Beth. So I don't know if you've had that issue before.
If it's Sterling, then they can pair it to Destination Imagination. This is a requirement from California, so it's not something we can fudge. So like we've got a lot of people that have different background checks. It has to be Sterling, but there's a code that you can attach to it so that if you've already got one through Sterling and it's valid for the season, you can link it to Destination Imagination.
Yeah, so there's also a question about the maps of 2 to 4. That's really a guidance that, as we've talked about this with the board in terms of how the board of Piedmont Makers, how big we want to support. If there's an incredible amount of demand, I think that's a good problem to have, and we'll figure it out. Part of this is based on how we scaled our robotics programs. When we started First LEGO League, 9 years ago or 8 years ago, we started with 4 teams, and this year it'll be like 150. So we're going from a similar incubation model and scaling up, but if there's a tremendous amount of demand, we'll make it work.
Yeah, and I mean, we can take as many as you want. In our region, we generally have about 100 teams.
Yeah.
We've had as many as 140 pre-COVID. Things have really changed since then. But as far as Destination Imagination goes, our region, we can handle as many teams as you want to send us. Yeah.
Or if there's more interest in the 2 to 4 teams, we'd be happy to support you and have, if you do more teams through Piedmont Makers, we'd be happy to support you in any way we can.
Yeah, and there's a question from Stephanie. I'm not from Piedmont. Does it make more sense for us to register through the DI website? So although we're called Piedmont Makers, we service, I think, on the order of kids from 90 different schools and I think 20 to 30 different cities. So our footprint is quite broad within the East Bay, and we serve as that local community partner that, provides all the connective tissue between the community and, the global organization, Destination Imagination, and then also the regional organization, Beth and Alan's group. So because we have those really strong community relationships, we have relationships with the school district, so we get, facility access, all those different things. We find, or parents find, it's a lot easier to go directly, through us, through Piedmont Makers, and we facilitate all the other connection points. So that's why we've been able to scale, the size of our programs within, the number of cities and the number of schools that I described. So that's the value that we offer on top of, the value that Beth and Alan and the Global Destination Imagination Org offers. There's a question from Ella. We have a mix of 5th and 6th graders in our group. Do we register for the middle school division per DI rules? How does that work, Beth?
Yeah, so you register at the oldest kid. And I know it can be tricky because not all schools, middle school is 6th grade. There is also an age component to it, and I don't actually know that off the top of my head. But generally speaking, if you're 6th graders or middle schoolers, then you're a middle school team. So again, you could have a team with a 4th grader and 11th grader. They're competing at the high school level. So it's the age of your oldest, the oldest.
Yeah, and also to be clear, when you go to our website and you register, you're just telling us what grade your kid is in, and we'll work to place them. Like if you want to have a team that spans the divisions, we'll work with, Beth and Alan in the group to figure out what is the right division for that group. So there's not a separate elementary registration from middle. It's just one registration form. And I think in terms of content, that's what we had. But if folks have questions, we also have an email address too. So if you think of a question after this, you can email di@piedmontmakers.org and we'll answer it as quickly as we can. Our website also, I don't have it here, but if you go to www.piedmontmakers.org/DI. There's a bunch of information and videos and content. We'll post, I think actually the presentation is always already posted, but we'll also post the recording. So if you have friends that are interested that weren't able to make this call, they can watch the recording later.
And we also have a lot of information on the destinationimagination.com or .org site. There are other videos and blogs, and there's how it aligns with curriculum. I mean, if you have specific questions about the program, and also the previews of the challenges for this year are really interesting. So I encourage you, if you're interested, to go and to look at those.
So there's another question in the chat about using our robotics or our engineering lab, our spaces. So I think that the short answer is yes, and we'll figure out like what's the best way to do that. So if there's power tools that you need access to, we actually don't have sewing machines, but we might have to figure that out if sewing is a big component of this. So,
well, and kids can hand sew. I mean, the young kids are using. I mean, there's a budget. I didn't mention that. There is a budget limit for each of these challenges. It's often in the $150 to $200 range, depending on the challenge. That's not what they can spend for the season. That's what can have value that goes into their presentation. So if they've painted a backdrop and they've used a portion of a can of paint, they get to do the math and figure out, did they use a quarter, an eighth, a 16th? How much did it cost? And that goes in their budget. Same, if they bought duct tape, but they only used 2 feet, how much of that was the cost? And that goes into their budget for what goes on to their presentation site. So I say that because oftentimes our kids are using recycled materials. The younger kids on a team, they made all their costumes out of paper bags. And then they were just using, tape and things like that to put together. So they can be as creative as they want. Sewing machines aren't mandatory. They don't have to know how to do that. And it's really if you want to teach that skill, great. If they choose not to use it though, that's up to them. So whether they do sewing or not is the kid's choice.
It's almost rewarded if you come up with a creative way to solve these solutions, to solve these challenges. For example, at Globals one year, I saw a team, a girl wearing a dress. I mean, beautiful, beautiful dress. And it was made out of the paint chips you get from like Home Depot, just all taped one, like it must have been hundreds and hundreds of these paint chips, but the dress was just beautiful, colorful, and they probably could have gotten away with putting 0 on the material cost because they went to Home Depot and talked somebody into getting, hundreds of these little paint chips. I mean, it was a beautiful dress. I have pictures of it. So that's what the program is really all about, is thinking outside the box, to teach kids how to think outside the box, come up with a solution that's different, it's novel and effective.
Beth, can you also, because I think you mentioned that there's 100 teams typically, or there have been 100 teams in the Best of the Bay region. How many of those teams go on to Worlds?
So we call it Globals. I think 30 teams from our region this year went to Globals. Alan, does that sound right?
We probably had about 50 something total. So yeah, because that's about right.
Okay, 50 from the region.
50 something, 50, 60 from the region.
It all depends on how big. I mean, basically it's first through third in every category that qualifies to go to Globals.
Super.
I will say not every team chooses to go to Globals because it's expensive, or relative to everything else that we've done, there is a cost to that because of the travel and the registration. So some teams may opt out, although in our region, we also give some scholarships and we can provide some extra money. A lot of teams do a considerable amount of fundraising to get themselves to that level. Our region is generally, maybe I shouldn't say, our region is generally over half of the state at the state competition. So if you're in the Best of the Bay, you have a great shot of getting not only to state, but to Globals. It's not typical in the first year that someone will go all the way to globals, but we've seen it done. But there's a lot of learning that goes on that first year, and a lot of, oh, wow, look at what they did. And then you'll see the next year, new things are integrated into it.
There's a question from Ella. Can you give an example of a science challenge?
Let me read. So scientific is not a challenge that I have done. I have been not only an appraiser, but a team manager, and I've not had teams. So this year, this is the brief introduction on this year's scientific challenge. It's called Lab Legends. It says the stakes are high as two rivals race toward the same goal using applied science. Keep the story moving with a live action montage. Create and present a story about two rivals who are each attempting to achieve the same goal. Research different types of applied science and integrate your research into the presentation. Design and create two different demonstrations of applied science. Create and present a live action montage. Create and present two team choice elements that show off the team's interests, skills, areas of strength, and talents. That last line is in every single challenge. Team choice elements goes with every challenge. You'll see, or I mean, if you listen and I wasn't speaking too fast, that's really broad. And that is the preview. So the actual challenge, when it comes, will have more details. It will have a scoring rubric. But applied science is big. One of the first things, again, if you have a young team, they should probably go do research on like, what is applied science? What's in that category? Then they can choose anything. How they do their story, how they create these two rivals. Their two rivals might be two germs, could be two aliens, they could be two humans, they can be anything. So Alan, have you been an appraiser for scientific? Do you have another one that?
I have, so, but how I might answer that question, because we're speaking to people who never seen a challenge, or a challenge solution, is in general, what these challenges are going to ask is create a skit, right? And there's going to be a theme to that skit. Like, what is the name of the scientific challenge?
This year's name is Lab Legends.
So that's going to relate to some type of theme. They're going to ask you to create a skit. But within the skit, if you chose the scientific challenge, within the skit, there's going to be elements. There's going to be certain elements that are that they are required to incorporate into the skit. For this specific challenge, there will definitely be a couple of the elements that relate to science. And in the engineering one, there will be a couple of elements that relate to engineering. And then there'll be 6 or 7 different elements on which they're scored. And then they come to tournament and they present this skit, which incorporates a scientific component or a engineering component, or in the case of the fine arts one, it's really purely just the performance, the storytelling, the skit in and of itself. I think that might kind of give it the overall, the higher level picture. I don't know if that helps answer.
They're very unusual. We had a scientific one year that was all about mystery, and they had to do something that had to do with a clue that disappeared. So I remember watching a challenge that year where they did something with invisible ink.
Right.
That was only one team. Different teams could do all kinds of different things. It allows for so much creativity and different ways of going about solving the same thing. That's the beauty of it.
There's another question. For this pilot, should we be thinking about finding other kids who might have shared preferences on which type of challenge that they dedicate a year to? It sounds like a good idea. Like if you want to be a team manager and you want to maybe pick one of the types and do it with your student, and then also bring in friends that you think might have similar interests, that could be a way of going about it. Or you could have the kids choose, right? So you just want to bring a group together that you think would be a good group to go through this, and then they can find pick the one that they want to. I think there are probably 2 approaches.
I have to interrupt there because actually the team manager doesn't get to choose the challenge. The kids do.
Okay.
That would be interference.
Yeah.
So truly, the team manager gets the materials and gets to read through it, depending on the age of the kids, with the kids. These are the 6 challenges, and they might spend 2 weeks going through them and learning, like, what are they? What are you going to be required to do? What excites you? Part of the season is having kids have to toss out some, come in on others. I mean, I had a team that took a month because they were split. 3 wanted to do this challenge and 3 wanted to do this challenge. So we had to do scientific Socratic seminars on why this one would be better and why this one would be better. And, just like they do pros and cons and charts. I had another year where they read the 6 challenges and they all went, that one, we want to do that one. But it's the kids' choice. So team managers, you get to sit back and be wowed. I will tell you, I was terrified the year my team chose the technical challenge because I read the technical challenge with them and I kept my mouth shut. I couldn't think of how to do it. They were so excited about it and they pulled it off. So it was actually good that I didn't know. They wanted to use hydraulics I knew nothing about. We all got to learn. They choose the challenge. It's really important. That's how hands-off this is.
Good. Well, so we're at the top of the hour. If people do have more questions, please email us at di@piedmontmakers.org. Hopefully you're excited. We're excited. If you do want to register, go to our website. The registration form is there. We will be forming teams over the summer and then look to kick those off early in the school year. So thank you so much, Beth. Thank you so much, Alan, and looking forward to the collaboration. And thank you to everybody for the interest in joining us tonight. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night.